Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Squarespace is the all-in-one website platform with all the tools that creatives need to build a website, stand out, and share your passion online. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rebecca, otherwise known as Hip Knit Hooray Online, and this is podcast episode 25. So in this podcast episode, I have two finished objects to share. I have one new cast on, updates on my longer term whips, not huge updates, but I'm going to share them nonetheless. And then I have some acquisitions to share at the end of this episode because it was my birthday earlier on in September, and I bought myself some yarn as a little birthday gift. So I'll share those at the end, but we can just get straight into finished objects. So the first one I wanted to share is my Simpukka Sweater, which is a test knit that I did for Rita of Aalloillaknit. So this pattern is planned to be released end of September, early October. I'm not totally sure on the exact release date, so I'll either include a link to the pattern if it's published or some notes down in the description of when the planned release date is. But yeah, this is a test knit that I did over the summer. So in terms of the pattern specs, the yarn that I used was BC Garn Melange and BC Garn Lino, both in the shade black. And those were gifted to me for the test knit. They were gifted to all of the testers for this test knit by BC Garn. I used 4.5 millimeter needles instead of 5 millimeter needles to achieve gauge for the sweater, and I knit the size 3. And in terms of how the sweater is knit, it's a top-down drop shoulder construction with short rows along the back, and then there's this central shell motif, which is really, really beautiful, but kind of hard to see in the black. And then these little twist cables on either side, and then the sleeves are stockinette and slightly tapered, and the motif is along the front and along the back of the sweater. And in terms of the modifications that I made, as this was a test knit, I worked it almost exactly to pattern, except I did crop the body a little bit by about 4 centimeters at the bottom. I think that the shell motif is so beautiful. It's what attracted me to want to knit this design. I would say it's very simple and easy to read your work once you understand how the motif works, but that does take some time. So to knit this sweater, I would definitely recommend practicing the shell motif as just a little swatch and kind of get a handle of that, because with the way that the sweater is constructed, you start working that shell motif here and start working short rows right away for the back shaping. So I think it can get a little bit confusing if you don't know how to read the chart. And I guess that's my next feedback that I have about this pattern, and something that I shared with Rita is there's 2 different charts in the pattern, at least in the testing. Rita may or may not be changing it, but there's a back shaping chart which shows increases as you're working short rows, and then there's a regular chart which shows the motif just worked straight up with no shaping or increases or anything like that. So reading those charts I found a little bit difficult because they don't really show that the yarn overs are moving over one as you increase those sections, and then as you decrease again to start over, then everything kind of resets. And I feel like the charts, I found it difficult to kind of picture that with the way that they're shown. This is all very vague, but I think maybe other testers also kind of felt the same. With the way that the chart is written, as well as where the markers are placed in the chart to keep track of your work, because since you're working this section flat as well as the front section, it's not as intuitive, I would say, to read your work, or maybe also because I was working in black, it was a little bit hard to read my work on the wrong side. So having more markers placed for the sections of the motifs, I think would have really helped me just really clearly see where I need to be doing a yarn over, where I need to be working in stockinette for that shell motif. So that's kind of my first feedback. It's not incorrect per se, but it is a little bit difficult to read, but I think, as I mentioned, Rita is doing some changes to that. And then the second thing that I don't really like about this pattern, and some feedback that I had, was the shoulder shaping here. So I think I mentioned it in my last podcast episode, but for this drop shoulder sweater for sizes 1 to 4, there are some decreases that you work at the underarm here. And I've never done that before. Usually I do the opposite with patterns where I have, I guess, fewer stitches cast on for the shoulder cast on. And then you work a series of increases to increase for the armhole and increase for your bust. And this pattern, you did the opposite. There is actually a number of decreases for the size 3. And so I was curious to see how that would impact the fit. And wearing the sweater now, it's not the most uncomfortable, but I do think it does look a little bit weird because you have some extra fabric along the top of the shoulder here, so it just feels a little bit bulky, and I just don't really see the point of the decreases in terms of the fit or design or anything like that. I would have preferred if there were no decreases at all, or if it was the opposite, like how I normally work drop shoulder patterns where you cast on fewer stitches for the shoulder seam and then you work those increases for the bust. But apart from those two things, I did really enjoy knitting up this sweater. I think the rest of the pattern was very easy to follow along. In terms of the yarn, this was my first time working with BC Garn yarn, and the BC Garn Melange is a woolen spun yarn, which personally I don't really like in general, so I feel like I'm probably not the best person to speak about the yarn because I just don't really love woolen spun yarn. I prefer when yarn has a little bit more drape and weight to it, I guess a worsted spun yarn. But if you like woolen spun yarn, or if you want something that's really lightweight, I think this is a really great yarn. It's super lightweight, lofty, and it's very soft, I would say, for a 100% wool. Not rustic at all, in my opinion. And then the BC Garn Lino, that is a 100% linen yarn, and I do think that that helped add a lot of stitch definition, especially to the shell motif here. But I did find that the way that the yarn was twisted, there would be kind of like uneven plies. I'll insert some pictures to show you. So I ended up needing to cut the yarn and then rejoin again. And some balls I didn't experience that, but other ones that would happen maybe like 4 or 5 times. So I'm not really sure if that's just the quality of linen when you try to spin it or ply it. But yeah, I did experience that. And because it's a plant-based yarn, you can't really like split splice it together, so I had a lot of extra ends to weave in when I'd have to rejoin. Not the end of the world, but I did find that a little bit inconvenient with that yarn. But yeah, this is the Simpukka sweater. I think it's so beautiful, and I love the designer Rita's Instagram, like her whole ethos to making, and I think she's just a really inspirational designer to follow, so I'd highly recommend that you check out this design as well as her socials. So yeah, first finished object. But before we get into the second finished object, I wanted to talk about Squarespace, who is the sponsor of today's video. So last year when I was a vendor at pop-up markets, people would ask if I had a website so they could check out the ornaments afterwards. And I did not at the time, but I'm building one now and I'm really happy with how it's turning out. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform with everything you need to grow your business and get paid, which is why I think it's perfect for fiber artists and designers who want to build a website to offer services or sell products. Squarespace offers a complete library of professionally designed website templates. These templates are organized by use and categories so you can select one that's really designed for your specific needs. And I chose this one, the Lexington, because I liked the clean but fun and bright palette. The template is a really great base to start customizing and making my own. Since this is my first time setting up a shop, I'm grateful that Squarespace really simplifies the technical logistics with easy online payments and built-in tools for inventory, shipping, fulfillment, and taxes. So if you're a creative that wants to showcase your work, I would highly recommend going to squarespace.com and checking out all these features with a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/hypnothooray and use the code HIPKNITHOORAY to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. My second finished object is a gift knit that I knit pretty quickly, I would say, for my cousin who's pregnant right now and is expecting her first baby, and the baby shower is tomorrow, so yeah, I finished this just in time because I finished it this morning. So I naturally wanted to knit something for the baby, and I was thinking maybe an accessory like a hat or mittens, but I thought that a knitted toy would last longer and could be some cute decor in the nursery. So I decided to knit a little stuffed toy. This is the Good Bunny by Susan B. Anderson. So I was initially considering a few knitted toy patterns. There's the Moosh and Friends book by Cynthia Valle, which I think those patterns are so cute. But I didn't have a lot of time to knit this toy, and so I didn't really want to set myself up for failure by knitting one of those, because most of the patterns in that book I believe are knit with fingering weight yarn on 2.25 millimeter needles, which create a really stunning piece but are very time consuming. So I went with the Good Bunny by Susan B. Anderson because this is knit with sport weight yarn on 3.5 millimeter needles. And I was able to knit this bunny in, I would say, like 2 weeks on and off, including the clothes. So Susan B. Anderson has a number of knitted animals that kind of all look like this. So there's the Good Bunny, there's the Good Bear, the Good Pig, and the Good Mouse, I believe. But I chose the bunny because my cousin had a pet bunny growing up named Bunny, so I thought this would be a really nice ode to Bunny. I thought that the pattern was super clear and very well written, and the construction of the bunny itself was very intuitive. So while I appreciate the really detailed instructions, I think I just had a really good flow when I was making this bunny. So you start off by working the feet in the round, and then you stuff them and then join them together, and then you're working the body in the round with some decreases. And then you start shaping the head of the bunny. So I'll lift her ears up. You can see that the back of the head it's kind of shaped like a heel flap and gusset of a sock, if you've knit a sock before. So it's like that, and then you pick up stitches along the side, and then you work decreases towards the nose and the mouth of the bunny. And then after that, you pick up stitches for the ears, and then you pick up stitches for the arms, and then you work those in the round. My bunny ended up being a little bit bigger than what the pattern described, even though I met gauge, so I'm not really sure, maybe I overstuffed it a bit, so it was a little bit bigger, but I ended up just going up a needle size for the sweater and the pants so those would fit, and everything worked out. I didn't really have to change the stitch counts for the pants, but I did for the top. So there's two comments that I have about this pattern. So the first is the sweater. So I initially knit this version here and followed the dress instructions in the pattern, but I just thought that the armholes and the sleeve stitches here were so big for how big the arms of the bunny are. And it might just be like a trust the process thing where maybe after working the sleeve you get it to fit, but I thought it'd be really fiddly anyways trying to switch between the colors here. So I ended up knitting this version here and adjusting the number of cast on stitches, the number of stitches, or the number of rows, sorry, before you split for the sleeves, and also the sleeve stitches here. I ended up changing all of that. Who knows, maybe if I finished this it would have fit the same, but yeah, I made a number of modifications to that part of the pattern to make it fit the bunny. So that's like one comment. I just don't really know why the armholes are so big on the dress. Apart from that, I thought that the pattern was really well written. The instructions are for 3 double pointed needles. So if you like knitting small circumferences with magic loop, you might have to do some changes to that, but again, very, very simple modifications. I like knitting small circumferences with double pointed needles, so it worked out great for me. One last tip that I would have about this pattern is you need to sew on the face embroidery and the eyes. So you can either add safety eyes, but from what I know online safety eyes are not actually that safe for babies, so I ended up doing French knot embroidery, and the eyes are not even, so I might need to go and fix that. But one thing I would say about this pattern is you should probably add those French knots before you seam the bunny closed. Ideally, I think as you're still working the decreases here, I would add the French knots then, because once the bunny's closed, I think it's really hard to be able to do that French knot there and then hide the thread inside the bunny. So I kind of wish that I did that because I waited for the bunny to be closed, and I only had like a very small hole here to poke my finger through to kind of work the French knot. So I'd probably add those earlier on in the pattern as you're still working the decreases for the nose and the mouth of the bunny. And then there's this really cute little embroidery for the nose and the mouth that you just add on at the end after you seam everything closed. I think that the embroidery on the face just really pulls everything together. I think it's so cute. I used exactly 25 grams of Holst Garn Supersoft, so half a ball, so I have enough to knit a second one for myself. This is the first time that I used Supersoft from Holst Garn. That yarn was gifted to me by Holst Garn as well, I should say, to try out. So I enjoyed working with it. For me personally, I don't really like rustic yarn for garments. I'm definitely learning to realize. So I probably wouldn't use it for garments in the future, but definitely for accessories, because it blooms really nicely. I think the stitches look really even. They fill out as well really nicely. There's lots of colors to choose from, and it's a very affordable yarn. So I would definitely use it again, but personally for me, not for garments, but for other things like this, I think it's great. So yeah, that's the Good Bunny. And I am gonna be so sad to gift it away, but like I said, I can make another one for myself. So those were my finished objects, and then moving on to my first whip, and I'll start with my newest cast on. So this is another test knit. So I finished the Simpukka test knit. I thought I was gonna take a bit of a break from testing, as I always say, but then I saw this design from Mei Knits, and I just fell in love with it. I think it's such a cool design. I'm gonna put a photo of it here. And this is the jelly top. So I am knitting the size 2 long sleeve in the pattern, and I just cast it on 2 days ago, so I don't have that much progress on it. But the jelly top is a 3-in-1 pattern. There's a tank top version, a t-shirt version, and a long sleeve version all in one pattern. And I am using Drops Kid Silk in the shade Off-White, which is yarn that I've had in my stash for a while, I would say about 4 years. And I find that this color and dye lot, I guess, is very soft, next to skin soft, not really any itch factor. And it has really nice fluff, which are all things that I really wanted for this top, because the jelly top is knit with 1 strand of mohair and it's pretty fitted. So definitely couldn't be itchy, but that's not my experience all the time with Drops Kid Silk. I've worked with other colors of Drops Kid Silk, and those are definitely more scratchy and not very comfortable to wear next to skin. The ones off the top of my head that are a little bit itchy are the cobalt blue and the red, but it might not be a shade difference. It might just be like over time, maybe Drops uses different manufacturers, or they change their manufacturer, so I'm not really sure why that is, but I probably wouldn't order Drops Kid Silk online. I would definitely go in person and feel it, because I think the quality can really vary. This one though is really soft, so it's working out for the jelly top. So here I am right now. This is the back panel here. So you start by casting on the back panel, and then I think there's going to be some increases here, and then you pick up stitches for the 2 fronts. And if you're working the t-shirt version or the long sleeve version, you are working a number of short rows for the sleeve cap here. So that's going to be interesting to work in mohair, the short rows. but we'll get to that a little bit later. And so far, I'm really enjoying it. I think that the ruching here is really fun. So I just finished my second ruche, I guess is the term. And that is achieved by 2 different needle sizes and working a number of increases and then decreases. So switching between the needle sizes is a little bit fiddly, but it's actually very relaxing to knit. I'm really enjoying it. And even when you change to the smaller needle size, something that's quite interesting to me actually is how stretchy the fabric is. It's a very stretchy top, which I guess is also in the name, the jelly top. So I'm really excited to see how this is going to fit, and it's a really fun knit. So that is my newest cast on. And then the next 3 whips that I have are all slightly older whips where I don't have a lot of progress on them, but I will share them quickly anyways. So this is the Tulip loop sweater, which is a pattern by Other Loops. Since my last podcast episode, I have finished the body. I think I was working on the twisted rib in my last podcast episode, so I finished that. I worked one sleeve, and then now I'm on the other sleeve, and there are a few short rows that you work here just to have a little bit more shaping along the top of the shoulder, but it's not a lot. Like, this is how many short rows that you work, and now I'm just gonna work in the round down with the cable motif along the top, but I think the reason I stopped is I kind of forgot how I did the decreases here, because I had changed it a little bit at the underarm here. So I just need to check my notes and remember how I did that. So that's why I stopped on this one. But yeah, that's where I'm at with the Tulip loop sweater. I'm hoping to finish this by the next podcast episode. I really hope so, because I am a little bit slow with this one, and I think it's a little bit boring to keep talking about it. So I hope to finish that one soon. The next whip that I have is the Tombo tee by Florence Miller. So for this one, I finished the body. It's a bit more of a cropped tee, so it didn't take that long to finish the body. And then I have the sleeves left and then the neckline here. So that's where I'm at with this one. This is a really nice portable knit because it's very small. Knit with fingering weight yarn on 3mm needles. It's very portable, and it's a nice and slow, relaxing knit. So that's where I'm at with the Tombo tee. And then the third whip that I have is another basic stockinette project. This is the No Frills Sweater by Petite Knit. So I finished the body on this one too. I cropped it by about 5 centimeters. And then now I'm working on the sleeve here. So hopefully I can finish these 2 sleeves pretty quickly and start wearing this in time for fall. I think it'd be really nice if I could finish this by Thanksgiving and wear it to some of the Thanksgiving festivities. Because I think you can kind of dress this up and make it a little bit more formal. So yeah, that's where I'm at with the No Frills Sweater. And those were all of my whips. I would say I have one plan that I guess I could talk about now. I am thinking of making some changes to the Minto sweater, which is a sweater that I knit, I think in 2022, I want to say. And I'll go grab it now, actually. So this is the Minto sweater here. It's a pretty heavy and pretty chunky sweater, I would say. I knit this with Lion Brand Fisherman's Wool, so a worsted weight yarn, and then knitting for all of soft silk mohair in the shade Dark Moose. So it's a pretty heavy sweater, which I actually turned into a dress, a pretty short dress. And I like this dress, but I think that the proportions of the sleeves to the body is a little bit strange. The sleeves are very wide and oversized, and then the length of the dress is pretty short, like it's above my knees. But then I think because of the fit of the drop shoulder here, whenever I lift my arms, it doesn't really become a dress anymore. It's more like a sweater. So I always have to wear shorts underneath this, and it's just a little bit too awkward to wear all the time, so I usually don't end up reaching for it. So I thought that maybe I would get more wear out of it if I undid some of the length and made it more of like a sweater, maybe a long sweater, maybe a crop sweater. I don't really know. So I'm thinking of doing that, or potentially extending it so it becomes a really long dress, but then probably not very practical because it's already very warm as it is right now. So I don't really know what I want to do with this sweater, but I definitely want to change it in time for this winter because last winter I didn't even reach for it once. So that's kind of how I'm feeling about the Minto sweater. Yeah, just really unsure, if you couldn't tell, about what to do. So if anyone has any suggestions, I would really appreciate it. I'm thinking maybe I will crop it, but I also don't know if that's gonna look weird with how wide the sleeves are. Like maybe I need to make it a bit of a longer sweater, but those are changes that I hope to make to this sweater in the next few weeks because I didn't reach for this dress at all last winter, and I just feel like that's such a waste because I think the cables on this are so beautiful. So that is a plan and a future change. And then I wanted to chat about some acquisitions. I got some yarn for myself for my birthday. So I really like the Yarn Dyer Dream in Color yarn. I believe they're a yarn dyer based out of Dallas, Texas, I think. I'm not totally sure. I'll fact check myself if I'm wrong, but I really like their yarn. I got 2 minis last year from Romney Wools. They're here, and I use them to knit a lot of ornaments, specifically my hats, and I want to make more this year, but I don't have a lot left. So this all started because I wanted to get full-size hanks of these 2 colors because I think they're so beautiful. So I started with that, but it's quite hard to get Dream in Color yarn in Canada. So it took some searching on the internet to find them. So I ended up ordering these from Jimmy Bean's Wool, which is my first time ordering from them too. But I saw that they had the Dream in Color yarn Smooshy Yak, which is I think very similar to this one. This is Smooshy Cashmere, but instead of cashmere, it's yak. So that was on sale for a pretty good price after the conversion from US dollars to Canadian. So I decided to get those, and then I decided I would get more things for myself as well. So I got these here, which are the same ones, but just full size, but I think the base is a tad bit different. So if you were thinking of getting the Smooshy Yak or the Smooshy Cashmere, they feel very similar, but I think that the Smooshy Yak, which is this one here, is a tad bit more yellow. It also could be I got this last year, and I don't know how long Romney had this in stock before I got it, because all they have at Romney are like a little small section of minis. So it could be that too, but I think it's a tad bit different. But yeah, this is still just as soft as the Smooshy Cashmere. So this is Fable, and then this is Blanche Floor. I think that they're so beautiful. I love the speckling on them. And then I got 2 more that I'm thinking of knitting some socks with. So I got some really bright colored variegated yarns, which I don't usually use, but I really liked the colors and it was something different. So this is Golden Kisses, which looks slightly different than the photos online. I was expecting it to be more just pink and gold, but there's a lot more colors in it than I thought, but it's okay. I think it's still really nice. And then this one, which is She Walks in Beauty. Also a little bit more different than what I thought online. There's a little bit more white than I was expecting, but maybe it's just in the hank. And I don't usually buy a lot of hand-dyed yarn, so I don't really have a lot of experience picking out the colors online and seeing how they look in person. They're just as bright as I expected, but yeah, the coloring is a little bit different. I still think they're really beautiful though, and I'm excited to, I think, knit some socks with this yarn. And then the last one that I got is another one that I'm excited to try out, which is Hedgehog Fibers yarn. This is the yarn that I would see when I first started knitting in yarn shops, and I'd be like, wow, it's so beautiful. And I always wanted to work with it, but it's kind of expensive. But again, it was on sale on Jimmy Bean's Wool, so I was like, oh, I might as well try it, treat myself for my birthday. So this is the 100% merino wool single ply in daisy chain. So I'm hoping to make some ornaments as well with this color here. So those were all the yarns that I got as a little birthday gift to myself. Kind of splurged a little bit. I don't really work with hand-dyed yarn that often, but I really like everything that Dreaming Color does, so I'm excited to be working with this for some more ornaments and socks this year. So that was everything for podcast episode 25. Thank you for watching, and thank you so much if you reached this point in the video. I will continue working on all of my projects and film another podcast episode soon, I would say, and hopefully finish some of those sweater whips that I've had on the needles for a while and make room for some new projects. So yeah, thank you for watching, and until my next video, happy knitting.